natural and unexplained phenomena. Spiritual activity. Cryptids.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to BTS, The Week in Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz. And with us tonight, we have Adam Tarsis, our brother Gigi Rabbit, Casper Parks, and our brother Bob. Hope you gentlemen are doing good tonight. So, what it do, peeps? Welcome, everyone. This is the show where we bring you, the listener, the strange news in mainstream media just won't cover. But first, a few announcements. We are live here on Google Hangouts, streaming from YouTube, and also broadcasting to Spreaker. Add and follow us on the Beyond the Strange YouTube and Spreaker channels. There is a Google Plus Beyond the Strange profile, and you can go to our website at beyondthestrange.com. Follow us on Twitter at StrangeDays2015. Use the hashtag BeStrange. It's the hashtag with the letter B, then the word strange after that. Like us on the Beyond the Strange Facebook page. We post most of the show's infos and updates. And finally, you can call in on Skype. The ID is StrangeDays2015. Also, you can use the phone line. That number is 707-200-3520. And I just want to say hi to each and every one of you. Adam, how are you doing tonight? If you're there. Oh, Adam, I don't think you're there. All right. Brother Gigi, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Well, it's been a very long, rough day, but all is fine and well now. Yeah, just one of those days, man.
I hear you, man. I've had those days. And Casper, how are you doing tonight, Casper?
Doing pretty good, doing good. It's nice and warm where I'm at, which is unusual, so but we're ready for tonight's show.
All right on. Thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Hi, Tina. How are you doing? Tina's in the Spreaker chat. You're first. Welcome. Brother Bob, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Again, I'm like Casper, enjoying this weather.
I'll bet. Right on. I hope Bev's doing good.
Yeah, she's doing great. Doing good.
That's good to hear. Glad. Hey, Dennis. Dennis has joined us tonight. What's up, Dennis? Adam, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Glad to be here. How's everyone?
Right on, man. Thanks for joining us tonight. And Natalie, how you doing, Natalie? Natalie's here. Everyone's just hanging in the Spreaker chat. For those of you on YouTube, you can go to Spreaker, sign up, create an account. Everyone's in the chat room over there. But you can also go to @StrangeDays2015 and Twitter. And the hashtag is BeStrange. And with that, we'll go to our first story. Unfortunately, gentlemen, it's a sad one. Progressive rock legend Keith Emerson, the co-founder and keyboardist of progressive rock group Emerson, Lake and Palmer, has died at the age of 71. According to his former bandmates, we regret to announce that Keith Emerson died last night at his home in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. Read a statement on the band's Facebook page. Emerson was considered one of the top keyboard players of the progressive rock era. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, Santa Monica police confirmed to the BBC. His death was being investigated as a suicide, police added. A police spokesman said Emerson's body was found in the early hours of Friday morning by his girlfriend, Marie Kawaguchi, at their flat in the California city. Former bandmate Carl Palmer said, "I am deeply saddened to learn of the passing of my good friend and brother in music, Keith Emerson. Keith was a gentle soul whose love for music and passion for his performance as a keyboard player will remain unmatched for many years to come. Keith Emerson, age 71, has passed away. Rest in peace, Keith. And that is hopefully the only sad news we have to hear tonight, guys. So I'm sorry if I brought anyone down. Here's an interesting story. This is one of the weird stories there. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels are showing a startling increase. And this is just a quick story I put together. And by the way, people, thanks for joining tonight. This was a very last minute thing, so you got to bear with me. I do have my notes in front of me. They're all jumbled up a bit, but it's all good. So the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations have spiked more in the period from February 2015 to February 2016 than in any other comparable period dating back to the 1959, according to a scientist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Earth System Research Laboratory. The change in average concentrations from February of last year to February of this year was 3.76 parts per million at the storied Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, leaving the concentration at 404.02 parts per million for February based on preliminary data. Peter Tans, lead scientist of NOAA's Global Greenhouse Gas Reference Network, confirmed that the increase reported previously by New Scientist represented a record year-over-year growth for Mauna Loa. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. He also said that in addition to the stark rise in carbon dioxide levels over the past year, researchers have now observed 4 straight years of increases of more than 2 parts per million in the atmosphere. We've never seen that, Mr. Tan said. That's unprecedented. Indeed, the average annual increase during 2015 of 3.05 parts per million of carbon dioxide at Mauna Loa was also the highest in the record according to NOAA, exceeding the previous record of 2.93 parts per million in 1998, which was also a strong El Nino year. So I'll go around and make the rounds. Let's start with Bob. Bob?
Yeah.
What do you think about that story? Noah's given us those numbers about the carbon dioxide levels showing a startling increase, especially with the El Nino records back in 1989, I believe. And now we have another El Nino this year.
Yeah, I remember back about that times when we had that big drought where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And so far this year, I can't see any signs similar to that. And with all the supposedly, pollution controls they got out there, it should be on the fall instead, not the rise. With all them pushing all
that's
these,
what I'm thinking too.
with all this pushing for the, solar panels in these cities and everything. So I don't understand it myself.
Casper, what do you think about this?
You're talking about something in the stars. There's like an increase in the level of carbon dioxide.
Yeah, supposedly there's atmospheric carbon dioxide levels are showing an increase.
Well, I would wonder how long we've been monitoring that type of measurement for that specific item.
Mm-hmm.
What the time, if it's been like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If it's not like a normal cycle. I think we need to get more data on it, but it is an interesting thing, though. It makes you wonder if, was that like near the planet or just out in the distant stars?
That's here.
That's here?
That's here on our planet. And it also says, Mr. Tans, the researcher, said the reason is very clear. He says the rates of fossil fuel burning remaining at historically high levels, releasing 10 billion metric tons of carbon into the atmosphere annually. The emissions are at a record high, therefore, the growth rate of atmospheric CO2 is also at a record high, he said. But I mean, could this also be a result of all the rainforests that have been getting chopped down in South
That would make
America and all,
sense.
all over the world? Yeah. So that's something to think about. Brother Gigi?
Yes, actually, I am not completely surprised, although I also would like to know how long we have been monitoring that. That's something to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But if I may speak for Randall Carlson, who I'm sure would say exactly what I'm about to say, this actually fits the mold for the idea of everything he's been focusing on for like the last 20 years. Now he's together with Graham Hancock. They're both corroborating on the same idea that there is, there's obviously cycles, and one of which the Ice Age always comes around. We know from ice core samples. At every, it seems to be every about 12 to 13,000 years, somewhere between 10 and 13,000 years. And this actually, there's several different climate changes and atmospheric changes that happen in these patterns, which we know for a fact from these ice core samples, which they can go back, as far as we can go back, is 250,000 years. But every single time before an ice age happens, we start to see these changes. Right now, they're spiking up. But if it goes like it has every time in our past, it will spike up for a few years, but then it will rapidly shoot way down below the normal levels, and which that would be the point where we enter. They're saying at this point it might just be a mini ice age, but don't let that comfort you too much, because that's not much fun either. But
Exactly, man. I couldn't have said it better.
yeah.
Adam, do you have any thoughts about this carbon dioxide rise in our atmosphere?
Honestly, man, I'm a proponent for we haven't been around long enough to accurately predict our own weather, so I kind of believe that it's part of the long cycle.
Okay.
So
Ultimately, I think yes.
yeah, I think I really agree with Graham Hancock about this particular subject. So yeah, I think it's all just the long cycle.
And for those of you that are not in the Spreaker chat, our good friend Dennis is putting links out there for a CO2 study list. Thank you, Dennis. As always, we really appreciate all the retweets. You're awesome. Thank you, sir.
Some too.
On to, yes, sir. Go ahead.
We've also had a rise in volcanic activity too. That I'm wondering if that's not contributing to some of the CO2 levels being higher.
That is true. And we were just talking about that, Casper, about Mount St. Helens. It's been, 30-something years since it erupted. But we've had more volcanic activity going on since then.
Yeah, it'll be May of 1980 was when it went off.
Amazing. So long ago, but it seems like yesterday. Seriously. So
Yeah, I remember that the cloud ash on Mount St. Helens circled the globe, it seemed like a couple of times. And I remember the winter that followed that, it seemed like the snow that fell had a slight gray hue to it, and that was a result of the volcanic ash mixing with the clouds.
I
remember
remember that as well.
And I'm telling you, I really thought it was the end for humanity, pretty much. And back then I didn't know about super volcanoes. I'm just glad it wasn't Yosemite.
Yeah, Yellowstone's long overdue for an eruption.
Or, I'm sorry, Yellowstone, not I'm thinking Yosemite.
That is
Yeah,
never a
Yellowstone.
comforting thought.
Yeah, that's certainly a scare, and really, it seems like just in general, not only the planet, but also you can see it in our solar system and other planets, and even all the way down to social interaction. We all seem, we seem to be hitting some turbulence in our reality, and it seems to be affecting everything quite a bit. But I think it all goes back to the cycles. We know the Earth has been through cycles of turbulence and non-turbulence, and humans have prevailed so far every time. So, although it might be scary at first, I think there's hope at the end of the day that we will continue to survive like we always have.
Oh,
Some
yeah,
of the comments
definitely.
in Spreaker, we have Dennis is saying that melting in Asia, Russia permafrost also releasing CO2 and methane on record levels. And that's not a good thing to think about.
Oh no.
And again, Dennis comes in and says plans to frack in Yellowstone is not going to. I didn't even hear about that. They want to frack in Yellowstone? Are they serious?
That's ridiculous.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
insanity.
That's freaking asking for it. Oh my
That's just
god.
No
childish.
doubt.
Well, we'll definitely have to get Dennis one of these days. Or Dennis, if you like, call in about that because that's the first time I heard of that. The phone number is 707-200-3520. Or you can use your Skype ID as well and use the Skype ID Strange Days 2015 to call in.
Yes, since they've been fracking here in Ohio, that we've had more earthquakes in these areas ever since they started that.
Yeah, you know what? And now I think about it, fracking doesn't help with our CO2 levels, I bet. Of course, I'm not exactly a scientist to say to like confirm that. And Cortana, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate you coming in, and Deanna. Cortana says there was a boost in birth rate post Mount St. Helens eruption on the Pacific Northwest. Her boyfriend Stonewall is one of the volcano babies. Interesting, very interesting. A lot of good stuff going on in Spreaker chat. You guys can go there and mix it up with everyone. So, thank you guys. Researchers find plastic-loving bacteria in recycling plant. This is a last-minute story that caught my eye. Scientists have discovered a bacterium that will consume one of the most common forms of plastic. Is it the first step toward a solution for plastic pollution? Plastic is everywhere around us. We drink out of plastic cups, buy disposable water bottles, unwrap new electronics from plastic packaging, take home plastic shop, yada yada. You guys get the idea. Plastic is everywhere around us. We drink out of plastic cups, buy disposable water. I think I just said that. Some 311 million tons of plastic is produced across the globe annually, and just 10% makes it back to a recycling plant. That's ridiculous. The rest ends up in landfills or as litter on land or in the ocean, where it remains for decades, if not longer. As for the plastic, it has been recycled. It has given rise to an unintended side effect. A team of scientists searching through sediment at a plastic bottle recycling plant in Osaka, Japan, have found a strain of bacteria that has evolved to consume the most common type of plastic. This is very interesting. I've been reading a little bit of it. Ideonella, see, this is where I get really messed up. Psychinesis. Okay, anyways, I'll put the link up later. Commonly called PET or peat, in as little as 6 weeks, they report in a new paper published Thursday in the Journal of Science. Common uses of PET include polyester fibers, disposable bottles, and food containers. The last two are typically labeled with a number 1 inside a recycling symbol. But this new paper doesn't mean you should ditch your reusable water bottles in favor of a tray of disposable ones, or that we're going to inject this bacteria into landfills tomorrow. This study simply evaluated if the bacteria in question could degrade PET and was conducted under laboratory conditions. We hope this bacterium could be applied to solve the severe problems by the wasted PET materials in nature. The Christian Science Monitor, in an email, says this is just the initiation for application. More research has to be done in order to make this a practical solution to plastic pollution. But could this effort sort of fix work in the theory? I guess the main thing about this is this. You know what? I don't even know where I'm going with this story. I'm so sorry, guys. That was really really weird. So I'm sorry about that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I know I heard back in the late 80s, early 90s that they'd been working on something like that to help with the plastic control or the garbage from plastic. And two, weren't they trying to steer away from the or PET plastics because it leaching toxins into whatever liquid it's holding? That's well, I thought there was a big move on that one.
That was
It was like
Casper.
I think it was like BMG free or BGM free. You'll see that now on kids' cups and stuff.
Okay, that's what it was. All right, my bad.
And, well, the thing with these parasites, though, if they evolved on their own to eat the plastic, what else could they evolve on their own to eat? Like flesh?
That would be really bad. I mean, we already have all those flesh-eating bacteria out there. That's not good. Brother Gigi?
Gonna have to pass, brother.
that's fine, man. I don't blame you. I'm still wondering where that story came from. Adam, you got any thoughts on this bacteria that eats?
You know, that depends. That depends, doesn't it? Kind of depend because did they make it in a lab so it's something that actually wouldn't have happened on its own, or did it evolve on its own? And if it did evolve on its own, that suggests a pretty fast evolution considering our use and consumption of plastics.
They did say that it was a laboratory controlled experiment.
So did they create the bacteria to do this, or was the bacteria discovered?
See, that's what I was wondering.
Tested it.
Yeah, it doesn't really say. It's in the ChristianMonitor.com. I'll post the links later, but it doesn't really say about that, whether it was created or is this something that they just found.
Yeah, see, because I think you have to answer that question first before you can go branching off anywhere else. That seems to be really important, vital fact to me.
I agree.
And Gabe puts, he brings up a good point. Most plastics are made of petroleum, which is true.
That's true.
Yep. Okay, so away from this plastic-eating bacteria, and I'm going to throw this story out there. And when we come back from break, we can definitely get into this because this is one of the main stories I wanted to bring up tonight. Apple's Eddie Q says FBI's encryption stance benefits hackers and criminals. And this is from TheVerge.com. The source is Univision. The FBI stance on encryption benefits hackers, according to Apple Senior Vice President Eddie Q, speaking yesterday about the ongoing legal battle swirling around the iPhone, used by one of the San Bernardino shooters. Of course, that's not the way they are looking at it, Q told Univision in Spanish language interview, but really that's what is happening. Q is the latest Apple executive to speak out against the FBI's demand that Apple helps unlock the phone, joining Vice President of Software Craig Federighi and CEO Tim Cook as part of a concentrated PR campaign to explain Apple's reluctance to comply. Q's interview was conducted in Spanish, but Apple provided an English translation soon after, showing the company going above and beyond its usual efforts to get its message out to a wider audience. The government wants more security than anyone, Q said, tempering his statements somewhat. The Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, who is responsible for the NSA, wants encryption to continue getting more and more secure because he knows that if we create some way to get in, criminals and terrorists will get in. They don't want that. But the Apple executive said that the FBI wanted to both maintain encryption but be allowed, in when required, two concepts that couldn't coexist. You either have security or you don't have security, Q said. Q pointed to more than 200 cases in New York City alone with phones that law enforcement want Apple's help to access. These aren't going to be terrorism cases. They are going to be all sorts of cases, he said. Where does this stop? In a divorce case? In an immigration case? In a tax case with the IRS? When asked specifically about Latino immigrants in the U.S., Q said that should the FBI be allowed into the phone, he was sure a judge would use the precedent in immigration cases. I never thought I'd be talking about a case in which we are against the FBI and the government, Q said, citing his own experience as a child of immigrants. My parents came to this country for the same things, to have civil liberties, democracy. This is a very, very big case about the government, about what the government can do. And to give such amounts of force to the government is not a good thing. Apple, on the other hand, was simply providing protection against nefarious forces. The best way to think about this is Apple's engineers against terrorists, against criminals, he said, are not protecting against the government. We want to help. Apple is willing to take the case to the Supreme Court, Q said, but he reiterated the company's stance that it should be decided in Congress, calling it a case in which all citizens in this country should be part of what is done here. Also, he brought up the government's less than stellar track record of keeping information safe, explaining why Apple believes any method but to bypass phone encryption would make its way into criminal hands. In recent years, the government has lost more than 5 million fingerprints from government employees, he said, also justifying Apple's encryption arms race. They have lost hundreds of millions of credit card numbers from financial institutions. This problem is happening more and more, and the only way we can protect ourselves is to make phones more and more secure. So, why isn't the NSA getting involved? That's a good point. And when we come back from break, hopefully, we can answer that question. This is BTS, The Week in Strange. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Yahoy, Beyonders, it's your brother Gigi. Have you ever found yourself wondering, why doesn't somebody make e-juice that doesn't just totally suck? Well, that's where we come in. Ether Vape. Just go to ethervape.com. That's AETHERVAPE.com. And enter the promo code BeStrange. That's the letter B and the word strange in one word in the shopping cart to get 25% off. Also, free shipping on all orders, and you get a 15 milliliter bottle of your choice for free with your first purchase. Remember, Ether Vape, because it doesn't suck.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Beyond the Strange, the Week in Strange, last minute edition. Wanted to put something together for you guys for tonight. Yes, Apple, the NSA, it's all going down. Could this be a breach in our security? We shall find out. And after this discussion, we will have Gigi's Corner in just a little bit. And no, Bev, actually the music is not SB. This is music that I found. And it's Beyond the Strange's music. So, gentlemen, Adam, I will start with you. How do you feel about this whole Apple iPhone encryption, FBI wanting to get in there and take over and get this information out of there? Go ahead.
I think I can see it from the FBI's perspective, in the sense that they're pursuing information, that has to do with their ongoing investigation, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I can see Apple's point as well about it becoming a huge security issue. Though I also find it really amusing that we live in a country where the NSA can listen to any conversation and probably has a written transcript of every conversation you've ever had somewhere, but the FBI can't open up a freaking phone. And also, I kind of am a little bit baffled too that if the investigation is about an act of terrorism, are they considering that an issue with national security? And then who's actually in charge of investigating that? Is it just the FBI, or would that automatically involve the NSA?
Well, they're trying to involve the NSA. The NSA is trying to stay out of it for some reason, and I don't completely know exactly why. I'll have to go back to the article. Gigi, do you have comments on this one? I know it's hard to find.
Sorry, couldn't get the mute button in time. Yes, I have a very strong opinion on this, and I think what Adam is alluding to, why is the NSA not involved in this, or why don't they care about this? I would jump to say that they're not worried about it because they already are involved with it. Now, before you even go into any discussion about any perspective of any of this situation, the first thing you got to remember and think about, and not even think about, but really honestly just realize, is that all technology, as unfortunate as it is, a vast majority of technological development has come because of military needs. It's, as brutal as all these wars we've had are, those are also where our best technology has come from, is for the need for this technology. So when you trace all of the stuff we use, everything we're using it to do the show, our cell phones, TV, radio, the computer, all of that stuff, you can really, the core of it, it's all either directly or indirectly evolved from actually German inventions, believe it or not. I know we'd hate to think that, and really, you got to understand that the military developed this technology initially. And if you're the military, you are not going to develop this kind of technology and give it to the public and give the public access to it without having a hold on it, without having already made a backdoor, as Apple, speaks of it as. But there already is a backdoor. They would not, to put it in more harsh terms, they wouldn't be foolish enough to give, a bunch of what they consider lower-minded people access to all this super awesome technology without having some sort of monitor over it. So ultimately, I think, this story is coming in at least 10 years late, if not a lot longer late than that, because, we know now, even even when you text, even if you don't send a text message, every single key that you type is recorded and it is stored somewhere.
Exactly.
It's not to say that somebody's sitting there and twiddling their thumbs going, see, and like following you, but they do have that data stored somewhere in case they need to go back to it. And I don't think they would have released all this technology, like I said, without pre-planning ahead to have some sort of a grip on it.
And also in this other article that points out that the NSA, one of the reasons why it's not getting involved is just that what you said. It might be more interested in conducting covert intelligence operations with the help of some of the tools that they can only speculate, without drawing attention. Casper, I know you have opinions on this.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of opinions on it. I think that the government, it doesn't matter what political party it is. They slip CISPA through and a must-pass budget bill. They've been doing that stopgap budget bills continually for 8 years, and every time they do, they put a rider in there. We've lost a lot of privacy in the riders. Most recently, CISPA in the end of December. The Apple thing. The guy that owns McVeigh, the viruses, he offered to get into the phone, said it'd take him 3 weeks, and the FBI has never responded to him. And I don't think he would make that claim if they hadn't already done it. Where McVeigh has already gotten into the iPhone 6, that they've already gotten through the crypt. You said it takes about 3 weeks, so they're probably like going into the chip itself.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. Then Obama today makes several statements in favor of it. And, the Republicans in the debate, they're all in favor of it. Every guy that's running for president right now, they want to start biometrics on visas. And it's going to go to passports, and it's going to go to your driver's license. They always, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And but Obama had this to say today. I can read, the statements he made. If technology, it is possible to make an impenetrable device where there is no key, no door at all, how do we apprehend a child pornographer? How do we disrupt a terrorist? Here's another statement which I found to be somewhat strange, just because of the phrasing. It's fetishizing our phones above every other value, and that can't be the right answer. The fact he used the word fetish in there is kind of odd.
That's very odd.
Yeah, and then he went on to say, if the government can't get in, then everyone's walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket, said Obama. And that's, then he closes out with, we cannot solve the problems of government and the problems we face collectively as a society unless we, the people, are paying attention. And privacy is a big issue, not just with the government, but with corporations. Tom Wheeler, surprised me, is, fought for net neutrality. Now he's fighting for our privacy with our internet providers. So at least there's some people in government that's got a half a brain, and are concerned about it. But the whole thing with this Apple thing, I agree with what some of the other people said too. I think that they're able to get in and they're making this a public issue because, it's one of those things where they tell you what they're doing at least once in the news. So you can later say, well, we didn't know you were doing that. And they go, oh, no, we said it over here. It's in the news. It was on like October 23, we said we were doing this. And it popped in out of the news so fast, hardly anybody caught it.
Yeah. I see and Bob, I'll get to you here in a second, but I see Gigi has a comment he wants to add. Go ahead, Gigi.
Well, really, I was just going to say exactly. But also, as soon as you dive into using the internet, using your phone to communicate with people, especially if it's important information, you've got to know right off the bat whether we know who is or is not monitoring or in charge of how this technology operates. You've got to know right off the bat that it's not a very private world. It's not a private way of communicating. And any thought past that is just really kind of irresponsible thinking. Kind of like I alluded to when we were on John Polk's show when I was working with that corporation, it got to a point where we had a meeting and we all decided that any further discussion on this technology that was being developed was only to be discussed in person. Our phones had to be turned off, computers had to be turned off, and anything that was to be written had no typing, it had to be pen, actually not even pen, it had to be pencil and paper. And I mean, basically what I'm saying is, you can't be using the internet and thinking it's totally private. There really is no possibility of that.
Of course not, man. Somebody is watching always. Somebody is always, listening on our conversations. I'm sorry, I don't want to make people paranoid, but they really are doing it.
That's the reality, and you've got the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can use technology more efficiently and not misuse it to your disadvantage, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely, it does make sense. And Casper, before you
yeah, I had a
comment. I just want to get to Bob's comment really quick, and then we'll come back to you. Bob, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, off myself, I think it's just a smokescreen. I think they've already got the way of getting in the phone. They're just trying to be people friendly now for some reason, But I think it's like everybody said, you can't get on the internet, or there is no encryption that the government cannot get into. And that's my beliefs anyhow. But these, all the smart people they hired just to do nothing but hack.
Absolutely.
So I find it very hard that they cannot get into an iPhone. That's
they can. That's not what the NSA is saying. It's not that they can't. It's the way they're going about it. They're not drawing attention to themselves for apparent reasons, like what Gigi and Casper are saying. In my opinion, that they want this on the under so they can continue doing what they're doing, so the people don't go to the Supreme Court and slam them and say, hey, you guys got to get off our phones, get off of our usage on internet and phone calls and that sort of thing. Casper,
exactly.
Go ahead and get the last comment on this. We'll go on to the next subject.
Yeah, I think it's all this monitoring is bad. Again, like this is more my view, is not necessarily anyone else's here. I believe the possibility, and I'm going to throw this is where it gets beyond the strange, is all this monitoring is moving toward a hive mind, and the Greys think as one, they're a hive mind. If they've been altering our DNA, this could be a step in that direction, and it's something we need to really approach with caution. I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but it's something that's been put out back in the 70s and the 80s that they were trying to turn us into them. And if that is the case, all this monitoring is a step that direction if you step back and look at the big picture. But again, that's not necessarily the opinion of the show or anyone else here. Nope. It's just a passing thought, something to consider. So, absolutely. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one, Dave. That's fine. Thank you for your time.
No, that's cool. Thank you, Casper. I appreciate it. And thanks again for bringing that up, that these are not necessarily the views of the shows or the opinions of anybody else's. We're not the final word. Please go out, do your own research, make your own assumptions and your own conclusions, and please always have your own opinion. And with that, I wish I had the music. It's Gigi's Corner.
All right, you ready for this?
Go for it, brother.
All right. Listen, everybody. I'm going to clear the air on a big subject of conspiratorial talk lately. We're all aware of the shootings in Paris that happened last November. Most notably and most talked about, it happened at several different locations, but the gnarliest one was the one at the Bataclan, where the Eagles of Death Metal were playing. Now, I want to start off by saying I have a lot of mutual friends with these people, and projects I've been involved with before were directly supported by these people. I got to know it's a very small circle. It's a family. It's really a family of musicians. They have their own little corner of the industry. It's all really, Josh Homme's kind of the king of that. He's from Queens of the Stone Age, from Caius, Eagles of Death Metal, obviously, several other projects, Mini Mansions, and he incorporates a lot of people, like he did them Crooked Vultures with Dave Grohl and John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. That was a pretty big thing. Like he's totally got, it's almost like its own industry. But the way they run it is such, I mean, these guys are the most warm-hearted, not to mention the funniest people. I mean, you cannot spend a minute around Josh with a frown on your face. I mean, this guy is the most warm-hearted, loving person. And which he is the founder of Eagles of Death Metal, along with Jesse Hughes. I guess they both co-founded it. Now we have this incident happen at an Eagles of Death Metal concert, which I'll get the creepy stuff out of the way right off the bat. So the facts are, they did a show at the Bataclan, and it just so happens, the last song that they played was a song called Kiss the Devil. It's almost like it was timed on cue, that it's the very last note of the song is exactly when the first shot was fired. And so now we have all these conspiracy videos out there talking about, I mean, you can already imagine linking it to Satan worship and all this stuff. And there's a lot of very terrible conspiracy videos out there totally trying to say that Eagles of Death Metal were in the know about this, they were involved with this, that they corroborated with whoever set this up. And it hurts me on a personal level. That's like somebody saying that your mom and your sister were involved in the Paris attacks. It's like, no, they weren't. I know they weren't. And right off the bat, the first thing you'll notice, you can go look it up. Look up Eagles of Death Metal conspiracy. Type that in YouTube. You'll see all kinds of videos popping up. And you'll notice about 90% of them, they try to say that Eagles of Death Metal is a death metal band, it's a heavy metal band, and they get into all of the science about how heavy metal music is a negative thing in general, how they can prove that it affects plants negatively, which is true, and that's all fine and good. But the thing that they don't even understand is that that's not the kind of music they play. The name of their band is literally a joke. It's an inside joke. It's called Eagles of Death Metal, but it is the furthest thing from death metal. That's like calling Frank Sinatra, that's like describing Frank Sinatra as black metal. It totally is the furthest thing from the truth. And right off the bat, it's interesting because a lot of these, I've seen all the videos, and they point out a lot of good facts, and they point out a lot of really interesting things about the situation. But unfortunately, they're trying to tie in the Eagles of Death Metal as if they had an involvement in this, which actually, I'm not going to take up too much time here. I will be on Micah's show, The Gralien Report, on Monday, which, Micah Hanks, that is, which we will be talking a lot in depth about this. But for now, I definitely just want to say, I mean, that everybody's totally got it, they're not looking at it the right way. And the way I see it, I mean, think about, now that's not to say that this whole thing wasn't planned, because if you really look at the details of the situation, the multiple places of attacks, the efficiency, the timing, I mean, obviously, this wasn't a bunch of homeless people coming together to rally against McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like, this was a very well thought out, very well armed mission. And with that said, I'm sorry, one second. I mean, with that said, another very interesting thing happened that night, which I will share with you right now. Not to get too deep out there, but I do have a friend, a very close friend of mine, who is in the Special Ops Marines. And this is going to touch on another point of my whole conclusion. This will all make sense in the end. Don't worry, folks. But my friend is in the MARSOC program of the Marines. Special Ops, intelligence, all that good stuff. And it's funny, that night that happened, a lot of my friends and everybody knows that I used to work with these guys. So as soon as the news hit the news, I got calls and texts from my friends like, dude, did you hear about this? Like, were you there? Like, are you okay? Like, I'm fine. But before all those calls, I got a call from my friend in the Marines. And he calls just right off the bat, cut to the chase. He's like, are you in Paris? I'm like, no, I'm not in Paris. What are you talking about? He's like, okay, listen. And he explained to me what happened. Like, literally, must have been minutes after it happened. And so he tells me, he's like, listen, if you hear from any of those people, if they call you, you need to text me and send this message. He literally gave me a 10-digit code. It was just a combination of letters and numbers. And he said, listen, if you hear from any of those people, you need to text me a text that just has this code in it. And that's all I need to know. And as a close, lifelong best friend of mine, I can't, I have loyalty to that. So I'm like, okay. Like at the time, I wasn't sure whose side of the fence who was on, but so that's a very interesting thing, because a lot of people would like to attribute these sort of situations to the American government. Like the American government's behind everything, which, don't get me wrong, I think they are behind a lot of things. But one thing you should know about the Marines that I don't know if many people know, but they're different from the other branches of the military, especially special ops. The Air Force, the Navy, the Army, if they want to do any sort of call to action, they have to get permission from Congress. They have to talk about it. They have to think about it. They have to go get coffee and think about it, and then they might get to the president, and eventually they'll give them the okay. The Marine Special Ops, different situation. They don't have, all they need is one word, go, from the president. So I'm told. Maybe he's not the guy calling the shots, I wouldn't doubt it. But either way, there's no process. It's just they are on top of it. So anytime you have these situations going on around the world, a lot of the times, those guys in the black copters, those guys that are, blended in, like that's the Marines, special ops, that are there right as it's happening. They've got intelligent. I wish I could elaborate a little more on how I know that they operate, but I really promised that I wouldn't say much. But the fact of the matter is that they were scrambling as from my perspective, they were obviously scrambling to figure out what was happening, because they called me right as it happened, and they were, wanting to know if I was there, if I knew anything, if I ever heard anything, let them know immediately. So if they were scrambling, that just indicates to me that they clearly were not involved in that. And if they were not involved, I would naturally be inclined to think that none of the other branches of our military were involved. So right off the bat, right there, I would like to suggest that that was not us that was behind that. I don't know who is, but it really doesn't look like it was us. And with that said, all the stuff you hear about the band, the Eagles of Death Metal, it's just right off the bat in the videos, they mentioned like this heavy metal band was playing satanic songs, and it's like, no, that's not. Although, albeit that song was called "Kiss the Devil," which, don't get me wrong, is clearly it would seem to be a devil worshipping song. But if you really, I just so happen to be a lifelong fan of theirs. Like, I know all their stuff by heart, and they are a bunch of jesters. They are the most sarcastic, humorous group of people you can imagine. And not only are they loving, but they joke a lot. I mean, they, just as well as they have that song, they have other songs that literally praise Jesus. I mean, literally the last words of the record, one of the records, was "Praise God." And that whole song was about, loving Jesus and everything. And on the same token, they also have songs about worshiping. Like, they're all over the place, but it's all very sarcastic, and it's all in jest. And you listen to their music, even just for 1 second, it's the most upbeat, happy, good vibe music. It's the furthest thing from any sort of aggressive metal. You can't even describe it as heavy. And it's just so sad from my perspective to see these guys being thrown under the bus like this, and all these conspiracy theories that otherwise, like I said, a lot of their points are very valid and it makes sense. And there are some other interesting facts. Like, for example, me and Michael were talking today. Just came out today that Jesse Hughes, the frontman, he mentioned that when he showed up, right off the bat, he didn't like the guy that was in charge of backstage security. And right away, he was like, hey, who is this guy? Like, can we get him out of here? What's going on? And it turns up 6 security guards did not show up that night for work. So obviously somebody knew what was happening. But yeah, this just came out today. And but the way Jesse did the interview and the way he handled it was very, very well done. And if you really listen to him and what he's saying and feel him, you can. Some people right off the bat are going to say, "Oh, he had a heads up and he didn't do anything about it." No. Really, what it is he didn't think anything of it because his mind is the furthest place away from anything like that. So he would have never imagined that something like that could have gone down. And another interesting fact.
You're going to be talking more into this on Micah's show, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to go full depth into it.
Why don't we do this? Why don't you let the people know what time and where they can find Micah's show? Of course, not like everyone knows, but
well, guess what? I don't know either, but I know it's on Monday, and
it's on KGRA, of course.
It's certainly on KGRA. The Grayling Report, Micah Hanks. You just look him up; it pops right up, and he does it every week.
I believe. Mm-hmm.
Yep, he does it every Monday. We should be doing it this Monday. If not, it'll be the next Monday, but relatively positive. It'll be this Monday.
We'll definitely need to hear that, man. And thanks for bringing that up. Let's take our next break real quick. I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, ultimately, I just want to say the Eagles of Death Metal have very seriously been played in this situation, in my opinion. You really got to think reverse psychology. Like, just given their name and given the songs that they're playing, the whole situation, because think about it, if something like this is going to go down, you have to have somebody to blame. Whoever's behind it, you have to have somebody to blame. And in this situation, they were the perfect people to blame, and I really hope people can see that from that perspective, because like I said, it's just really sad for me to see so many people rallying against Eagles of Death Metal for something that they had nothing to do with. And that's
it's
all
obvious that this was making the Eagles Death Metal a patsy in this whole thing, and there's all kinds of comments in Spreaker right now. Gabriel's posting links. I believe another person. Who is it? I can't see. The Spreaker goes by too fast, but there's definitely a lot of links. And Allison also says it wasn't our Marines; it was the Cabal. And that makes perfect sense.
And that's what I'm saying. It was not the Marines. I know that for a fact.
It was not. But
yes.
Let's go ahead and take our next break. And when we come back, we'll get more into the week in Strange. Don't go away. We're back.
This is Steve Bunker from Blueville, Virginia, and you're listening to Beyond the Strange with Dave Cruz and LJ3.
We're back with Beyond the Strange. This is the Weekend Strange edition tonight. Very, very last minute put together for you Beyonders because we love you so much. And thanks again, Brother Gigi. And you know what? Those guys really do need to be vindicated, and I'm pretty sure the truth will come out. You know, there will be justice for them, and it'll be all right, bro.
And yeah, thanks for letting me get that out there because
Absolutely, man.
Nobody seems to be sticking up for that, so here I am.
Well, as long as there's people like you out there, then definitely, man, they'll definitely be vindicated. On to the last subject of the night, and this is going to be an interesting one. Casper's going to piggyback off of this story after I read it about another story that definitely makes things out there not so much a skepticism, but disinfo. But when you hear the story, you'll know what I'm talking about. So the story goes: cops confiscate man's guns for believing in Bigfoot, UFOs, and CIA conspiracy. Although Ralph Gilbertson has never been arrested for domestic abuse, is not a felon, and has never been deemed a danger to himself or others, cops in Richfield, Minnesota, confiscated his firearms. This comes from copblock.org, and I went ahead and posted the links in Spreaker. I'll put it up in Twitter here in a bit. The story goes on. 74-year-old former Marine and security worker has a state-issued carry permit and is now suing in an attempt to get police to return the 3 legally acquired handguns they removed from his home last May. Gilbertson believes in Bigfoot, UFOs, and receives treatment for a mild mental health disorder. Police were alerted to him after people at his apartment complex reported that he frequently brings up government conspiracies and expresses concerns that the CIA is spying on him. He wrote a series of letters alleging that he was constantly being harassed by CIA agents that had infiltrated his apartment building, posing as tenants and staff, and said the conspiracy even reached into the Richfield Police Department. There are literally hundreds of CIA spies in Richfield alone that harass me, Gilbertson said in one letter. There are thousands of these people in the south suburban area. I am certain I will be murdered someday. Gilbertson also keeps a list containing over 75 license plate numbers from vehicles he believes have followed him. Even though he didn't threaten violence in any of his letters, officers still came to his home and demanded he turn over his guns. It was Hennepin Community Outreach for Psychiatric Emergencies, COPE, that called police about Gilbertson after his apartment managers voiced concern about the letters. The street cops nowadays have to be psychologists, Lieutenant Mike Flaherty said. People don't wear nameplates saying paranoid schizophrenic, so the police have to go in there and make judgment calls. In all, the cops seized a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol, a .357 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and an RG-22 revolver from Gilbertson, with Flaherty saying the questionable gun grab was completely appropriate. I'm confident our officers seized the weapons with the best intention, Flaherty said. It was a mental health issue, and I think cops responded appropriately. It is not a crime to be a conspiracy theorist, but Gilbertson's attorney, Paul Bartschy, says that his client is having his Second Amendment rights infringed upon simply because of his beliefs. He's what some people would say is a conspiracy theorist. It is an unusual situation, Bartschy said, but really the police acted unilaterally in deciding that a person who has these beliefs can't be trusted with a gun, and so they just took them without a warrant. Gilbertson, who lives on a meager monthly Social Security payment of just $900, is optimistic that justice will be served in his case, and that the firearms will be returned. He described himself as a patriot and a Christian who would not hurt anyone. So, guys, what do you think? And I'm not just talking to our panel tonight. I am talking to everyone out there who's listening. Anyone who's listening to this podcast or this broadcast tonight. This guy had his Second Amendment rights infringed upon because he believed in something and he wasn't threatening in any way. In my opinion, I really believe that this was something that was acted out of ignorance because they should have learned more about him. And, you know, he had guns, but he also had permits for them. I'm sure I'm going to get backlash about my statements tonight. But again, they didn't have a warrant. They just went in there and took his guns because they heard about what he was talking about. And Gigi, I know you have your hand up there.
Yes, if I may. Well, first and foremost, I'm leaning towards your side of the story for sure. Second most, I feel like really we don't know enough about the situation to, as much as that's a lot to know. But I feel like we don't know quite enough to know exactly, really specifically what the confrontation was, because in the way that story's put out, like, yeah, for sure, like, they totally stepped over the line and that was unnecessary. But at the same time, I don't know, some people, I think it's a common thing we've seen throughout history that, at least from our viewers' perspective, you'll see that people that come across truth, and especially people that investigate truth, like, for example, he's investigating Bigfoot. Honestly, I'm not a big Bigfoot guy. I do believe that there is something out there that is being called Bigfoot that we don't understand.
Not just Bigfoot, UFOs and other things.
Exactly, and that's where it gets even deeper. Exactly. Once there, you will notice, if you haven't noticed personally in your life with other people, you will notice throughout history that people that come across the deep levels of truth and come across it too fast tend to react badly to the information that they're receiving, and those reactions can be misperceived as being, quote, crazy or being out of line, to the point where somebody like an average police officer going to the donut shop, no offense police officers, they might not quite relate on that level, and that sort of thinking might seem kind of threatening to them. So I could understand a situation like that, but like I said, I don't think we really know enough about just the confrontation in itself to really make a case about it. But like I said, I'm leaning towards you, though, that as far as the facts that we've been given, that does not justify what happened.
And like Dennis, and like what Dennis said, you know, there's not really a whole lot that we know at this time, you know, from the article that, you know, was the family involved? You know, did they turn him in? Maybe. You know,
that's a whole other thing.
Sure
yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of other factors that can be involved in this. And Casper, I'll get to you last if you don't mind, because I want you to have the final word. Adam, do you have any comments on this? Or perhaps not.
Yeah, sorry.
Bob, there you are. Okay, there you go. Gotta be quick, man. Gotta be quick.
One quick hit. You know, I think I agree that we need to know more about what the situation actually was, because it's kind of a sticky situation too. Because on one hand, you know, you have a guy who does have a mental health diagnosis, but it seems under control and benign. He's got permits for the guns. So the question is, are they being responsible and protecting the community by removing the guns in case there's a problem, or did they go about that the wrong way, and should they have known more about the situation before they just walked into his home and taken the guns? So I think you
And
have to actually know more about the confrontation as well before you
true,
can really make
but
a good judgment call.
when does probable cause trump a warrant, especially, when he's not being violent, he's not making threats, he's just talking about your everyday UFO sighting, or talking about JFK or something like that.
I don't disagree with that at all, because I think there's nothing wrong with having those conversations, and I don't think he should be stigmatized or penalized for having those conversations. We
right.
talk about that stuff all the time, but I don't have cops showing up at my house to take my stuff.
Not yet.
Maybe in a week or two.
Exactly, and that's my point, is when one person, and this is just my point, this is just my opinion, everyone out there who's listening, you don't have to agree with me, but what I'm trying to say is, when does it become, where is the line drawn to where we say, hey, what are you doing coming to my house? I was just talking about football, and you're taking my stuff away.
Can I ask about the other line in the sand? Because where's the other line that says, oh, we waited too long and that situation is volatile and now we've had a loss of life because we just kind of let it go too long? Where do we draw that line to? Because that's an equally huge problem with these situations.
Right. And I know we can get really, really deep in this rabbit hole with all the mass shootings and the terrorists that San Bernardino and Sandy Hook and all that. I totally understand where you're coming from, Adam. But again, this is something that if the Justice Department is saying, hey, we did this legally, then how legal did they do it? That's my question. I'm not saying that
I agree.
They're not looking out for anybody.
I would
I'm
like
not
to
saying
see.
They're not looking out for the safety of the community or the public. What I'm saying is, if they said they did this legally, how legal did they do this? That's my point.
I agree with your point.
If you have a mental illness, does that mean that your rights are taken away just like that? You're stripped of them?
Nope. I don't agree with that either. And I see your point. I even agree with your point. I'm also saying that, there's this other side of it too. And I think we don't know enough, again, about what actually transpired to make a genuine, informed judgment call. I don't think they should have just walked into his home and taken his guns. Mm-hmm. But then the flip side of that is, how do you know when that is exactly what you should do? Because, well, maybe if you waited too long, it could have even been violent. So there's all the other backstory that you don't know. Like, okay,
That's
we
true.
know he had some mental illness, but from our perspective, from their perspective, was the mental illness under control? Was it well kept? Did he have any history of violence or any kind of outburst before that? Or is this something that's purely motivated by the paranoia of his neighbors based upon his beliefs?
And in the article, it says there is no history of violence. No history of any of that stuff. So
then I think, I think they jumped the gun to take his guns.
But you're very well, your point is very well valid. I mean, the safety does, come first.
Well,
for the public. I totally agree with that. It is a touchy subject, just like Dennis says. Everyone's going to have an opinion about it.
I think it's really volatile because I think a lot of people are, especially, a lot of people live in their community, and now, they are living in their community in some kind of fear because this is the stuff that they're getting fed on the mass media every day is about how everybody's being shot and killed. And, it's not just crazy people that shoot and kill you now. It's police officers that shoot and kill you now. It's, oh my God, that guy shot somebody else 3 times in the face because he sneezed at you when you passed him. I mean, it has become that crazy. So I think I think when we have law enforcement that's actually in place and is honestly doing their job, I think for them there's an extra pressure coming from communities that are living with now this new paranoia about how there's always going to be some crazy person around the corner with a loaded gun to kill your kids.
That's very, very well said, and I appreciate
There's so much pressure in that for all parties involved. It's it's a big, big thing.
It is, and again, it's a touchy subject, and I appreciate where you went with that, Adam. Thank you very much, Bob. Sorry, we haven't heard from you too much tonight.
No problem.
What are your thoughts and comments about this?
Well, I pretty much agree with Gigi and Adam that we don't have much of the backstory. Plus, we don't know what went on with this last session with this mental service provider, to where maybe he had said something to them, and where they thought he was maybe getting a little bit too close to that edge, and they pass it on to the police department, try to, as we were saying, head something off before it happens. So, but then again, we don't have the full story.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I muted there so we could hear you and not me. And Casper, after your comments on this, I know you have another story you want to get into, which ties into this, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I question him taking his gun simply because he believes in UFO and a Bigfoot. If there's something going on that we haven't heard about yet, like the others had mentioned, there's a mental health care provider, if you had one, say something, the neighbors say something, but then we're reaching that, if it was the neighbors, then we're reaching a point where, people are narking each other out left and right. Both political parties right now, because, we're in an election right now, or a supposed election, and one of the things they're calling for is, in the background checks, is, we need mental illness needs to be in there. Right now, the Veterans Administration provides a list to the FBI of vets receiving mental health care treatment that could be violent. So when they go to buy a gun, if you're on that list, you'll be denied. The VA is already doing that. We know that for a fact. I have a neighbor who's a police officer, and we were talking about this a few months ago. If he pulls somebody over that has a mental health condition, their little computer screen in their cruiser alerts them, so they're aware of who they're dealing with going in. My big question, because they keep raising this for gun control, mental health issues aren't in
we hear it every day.
Checks. And it's like we're on the verge of, it's like we're on the verge of having I've coined this term now for over a year. It'll probably be called something else, but both parties are calling for it during this election. We're on the verge of having a mental health registry. And it may be called something else, but the bottom line, it still becomes a mental health registry. And anytime that the government or even an employer or whatever, because employers can have a lot of pull, especially if it's a big corporation, how easy is it going to be to get on that list? How quick could you be put on it when you don't need to be? And how difficult is it going to be to get off the list? Once that mental health care registry, whatever it's going to be called, is created. And with both political parties pushing for it, and this election term is something that's going to happen. And they keep bringing up case, where this Colorado shooter, the guy we're talking about now who didn't do anything wrong, or you talk about, the shootings in schools, in places of work, just constantly in the news in your face. And, people are, a lot of times they're like sheep. You look at what happened tonight in Chicago at the Donald Trump rally, where it was canceled because of security concerns, and then protesters against Trump and supporters of Trump started breaking out into fights. It's like they're being led, being led by the nose. But there's a mental health care registry on the horizon, and once you get on it, how difficult is it going to be to get off it? That's a question. And then there's his last name was Odom. I think his first name was Kyle, but let me have that wrong. He was a Marine veteran, honorably discharged. went and shot a pastor who had opened a prayer meeting for candidate Cruz. Shot him 6 times, including the head. The pastor survived, and the guy, even though having shot the pastor, they knew it was him. He got onto a plane, flew to D.C., and then threw a flash drive and some other stuff over the fence, and Secret Service apprehended him, and then found out he was wanted for that shooting in Idaho. He had been in and out of the VA mental health care treatment system. However, he had purchased guns legally, so if he might not have been on the list yet by the VA to the FBI to buy guns. I don't know how often that's updated. And he believed that the pastor, and he had a whole list of probably 30 or more politicians and other people that he believed were shape-shifting Martian reptilian aliens trying to take over the world. When he was flying in planes, he thought people were trying to control him telepathically. When all this started, he had an encounter with a blue orb. And, the Beyonders and people in the Fringe have heard of the blue orbs before. But he had an encounter with a blue orb. And right as soon as I heard blue orb encounter, and that's when everything started, I kind of went, the blue orb keeps popping up again and again. But it was just so weird that he had, that's what he believed. And, that these were shape-shifting aliens that were from Mars that are like reptilian. And it was just so bizarre. It was in the news for almost a week, on and off. And, but they clearly said it was mentally ill, but he had no weapons when he was at the White House at all, none. He said the only reason that the pastor survived the shooting was because he was reptilian shape-shifting Martian alien. Was the only reason the guy survived.
How much of the mainstream media covered this story, Casper?
It was on Washington Post, Huffington Post. It was on all of them. ABC, CBS.
They also covered the Fringe, though. Huffington Post and Washington Post.
Yeah. Oh, they do. But this was in regular media too. The guy had a manifesto. I wouldn't, the manifesto was always on a PDF document, and I will not open one of those on my computer because of viruses. Are too easy to put inside of those things. So I don't open PDFs unless I know who it's from and I'm expecting it. Otherwise I don't open nothing like that.
I don't blame you, man, completely.
Yeah. But this guy had an encounter with a blue orb, and then all of a sudden, bam, he's mentally ill and seeing shape-shifting aliens all over the place. He even has a picture of one drawn up. So I should have pulled up the link for it to post it in speaker. Sorry about that.
That's all right. You know what? If you can find one, maybe we can post a link to the Beyond the Strange Facebook, and or you can just send me a JPEG or something, and I'll post it myself.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's, and you hear this, and I said this, and I did a post on it. There shall be no peace on Earth until the issue of alien contamination and interference is addressed. Mm-hmm. When I saw the news article, the first thing I looked for is, I hope this guy didn't get something off me. Because that's something I post up there periodically.
Yeah,
I don't think he didn't know. But the encounter with the blue orb gave me pause. Because we hear that continually in the Fringe Network. The blue orbs, the blue orbs, the blue orbs, and I don't know if I've ever heard of one doing a mind control to become violent before. If anyone else on the panel's heard of that, or anyone speaker, where someone's kind of violent after a blue orb encounter.
I haven't, but Adam did post a interesting comment here in the panel, the side chat, that Monarch programming. Hey, you never know; it's possible. We could definitely get the subject on another show for the blue orb and Monarch paneling or programming. But
and this mental illness thing, this guy was in the Marines, honorably discharged. You look at the Colorado shooter, his father allegedly had some kind of weird thing going on too. Right. Is there an MK alter mind control thing going on? I'm not convinced there is. I'm not
can't
convinced
rule
there
it
isn't.
out either.
Pardon?
So you can't rule it out either.
No, I can't rule it out, but I'm not going to rule it in either. Anything that we approach like this has to be taken with care and looking for hard evidence. I don't know who it was that said with extraordinary claims, requires extraordinary proof.
Very well said.
Pardon?
I said that's very well said. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I didn't say that's not mine. I'm not sure who said it. Might have been Corey Goodall or something like that.
Oh, whoever said it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. Whoever said it, but yeah, the mental health thing is just it's a progression, and and if they want to mess with you, it's real easy to do so. Just to throw you on that registry, and then try to get off it. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a major, major, major chore.
That is definitely something we got to keep an eye on, and I'm glad you brought that up tonight. Thanks. Gigi, you look like you want to say something before we go.
Well, yes. Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of points, especially, former Marines, all that stuff. And kind of like I said, some people do not handle the exposure to truths on whatever level it may be very well. And, there come... yeah, it is a very touchy subject, but I mean, there's definitely situations where you've got to also look at it like this. Accusing someone of mental illness is the ultimate no questions asked way of shutting somebody out of any conversation. So who's to know, especially with this guy being former Marines and what have you, who's to know that who knows what that blue orb experience was? I actually do know someone that had a black orb experience. It was actually their whole family experienced it together. I would love to get them on to talk about that one day. But
yeah, that would be great.
But point being, I guess ultimately it's just right back down to we need more information about the situation, and I would like to hear what that guy has to say himself rather than the press release, because I just feel like there is a lot more to the situation than what we know right now. And I think it'll make a little more sense once we do know that information.
Right. And I just want to thank everyone tonight for being on a panel. Adam, thank you. Brother Gigi, thank you. Jasper, thank you very much for being here. And Bob, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it, gentlemen. And with that, we'll go ahead and roll the credits and the show. I want to thank everyone in the panel tonight. Gentlemen, thank you again. Our creative producer of Beyond the Strange is Rick Sennett. Co-host is normally LJ3. Big shout out to LJ3. Please, everybody, lots of healing light to our brother from another mother. We love you, man. And Brother Gigi, our co-host. Retweets and postings by Dennis Koch and Gunny Jean Vito. Bleh, I can't talk. Music is by Alan Hall and Melody Loops. Intro is by Spaceboy. Visit him at spaceboymusic.com. Bumps and drops by Brian Anderson and Gunny Jean Vito. You can hear more of Brian at brianandersonvoice.com. Tech Advisory is by Brian Anderson. And don't forget, this Sunday on Beyond the Strange, we have Robert W. Sullivan IV, author of Cinema Symbolism, and he's just a very interesting, amazing guy. We've had him on the show before. Can't wait to talk to him again. Until then, you guys have a good night. Be safe, be happy, but most of all, be strange. Hasta.